This week in gaming, the studio formerly known as Irrational Games has changed their name to Ghost Story Games. Their next project is yet to be announced, but apparently they're going hard on the story angle. We have some news on the Nintendo Switch. Split-screen multiplayer has been confirmed for Halo 6. A new Overwatch hero is being teased. The Banner Saga is free for Twitch Prime users until February 28th. SteamVR for Linux has gone into beta, and Axiom Verge will be receiving a physical release on PS4, Vita, and Wii U. This is 1RBC Gaming Weekly. First off, we have some news about the Nintendo Switch, and it's not entirely pleasant. First off, the Virtual Console will not be available on the Switch at launch. In case you're unfamiliar with it, Nintendo's Virtual Console service is essentially their emulation software that allows you to play games from older consoles on newer hardware. If you'd like to play the original Metroid or some Captain Skyhawk on your Wii U, you can with the magic of a Virtual Console. It's disappointing for some folks that they won't have VC on the Switch at launch, but it's not entirely surprising considering Nintendo's history with online services. Speaking of Nintendo's online services, this week it was also revealed that digital Nintendo Switch games cannot be shared across multiple systems. While your games won't be tied to your hardware in the way that they were with the Wii U, if you have multiple kids and you get them all for your own Switch, you'd better be ready to buy digital games more than once. We do have some less disappointing Switch news this week, as it was announced that 4 additional games would be joining the Switch launch lineup. They are the puzzler Snipperclips, the platformers Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, and the spin-off Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment, along with a racing game Fast RMX. The Nintendo Switch is set to be released on March 3rd, 2017. Are you planning on picking one up? Hit us up on Twitter at OneRuleBeCool and let us know. We have some interesting SteamVR news. The software went into beta for Linux this week. If you happen to be in the tiny minority of people who are actively using Linux and who own an HTC Vive, you'll be able to try this out. You'll just need to be sure to download the Vulkan drivers for your respective GPU. Now, if you're a developer, this news is probably really exciting because you're likely one of the few Vive users who's also on Linux. If that's the case, great news. Valve's course for SteamVR tracking training, which used to cost $3,000, is now completely free. If you'd like to learn how to develop games using the more advanced tracking systems of the Vive, you can do so for no cost. Our last bit of SteamVR news is less exciting but still pretty important. Steam Audio is now available on GitHub. According to Valve, Steam Audio adds physics-based sound propagation on top of HRTF-based binaural audio for increased immersion. Sounds interact with and bounce off of the actual scene geometry, so they feel like they are actually in the scene, and give players more information about the scene they are in. Basically, better 3D audio in video games. You know how it feels when you're playing a game and suddenly there's a sound that comes from behind you? Valve is working on improving that experience. This is cool enough for ordinary games, but for games in virtual reality, it really helps take them to the next level. If you're a fan of Sid Meier's Civilization 6, good news. An update is set to hit the game sometime soon. It'll bring Steam Workshop support along with modding tools and multiplayer teams, so you can enjoy the game against your friends or alongside them. The next update is also set to bring bug fixes and AI improvements. Additionally, Australia will now be playable in the game, represented by Prime Minister John Curtin, who was in office from 1941 until his death in 1945. Thus far, the response to the Australia DLC has been generally positive. However, it's currently only available on Windows. Sid Meier's Civilization 6 is available for Mac, Windows, and Linux.
This replaces the infantry unit, and gets additional combat power on land tiles adjacent to water and when fighting outside their territory. The Outback Station is Australia's unique tile improvement. This tile improvement unlocks with the Guild Civic and can be upgraded with steam power and rapid deployment. It provides food and production with bonus food for adjacent pastures. In addition, pastures can trigger a culture bomb effect, grabbing adjacent tiles from other civs and city-states. John Curtin's unique ability is called Citadel of Civilization. Australia gets bonus production at the start of a defensive war and when it liberates a city. Australia is a civ that can make great use of their coastal land. The bonus yield from high appeal tiles can snowball over the course of a game. The extra housing from coastal starts means Australia can grow large without having to make extra investment into housing. This gives players the flexibility to choose any victory path. Australia's increased production bonus when targeted for war gives it a strong defensive capability. Just because Australia doesn't have a strong army when the war starts, doesn't mean they can't put one together in a hurry. As John Curtin said, the game isn't lost or won until the last bell goes. How will you lead Australia in Sid Meier's Civilization VI?
We have some less pleasant news relating to Australia and video games. Video games sold digitally on Steam in Australia will have a tacked-on 10% GST, or goods and service tax, starting in July. Down in Australia, gaming isn't the cheapest hobby due to taxation and shipping costs and such for hardware. Now, historically speaking, Australians have wound up paying quite a bit more for all sorts of goods, but they have especially had to pay the price when it's come to game consoles and software when it was on discs and cartridges, physical media. The advent of digital distribution has been a game changer down there, though some companies have claimed the Australia tax as a valid way to charge more for totally digital downloadable products that don't cost anything to ship. Adobe, for example, charged Australian customers over $1,700 more for their CS6 Master Collection. Now, back in 2013, when this was news, it was pointed out that people could just fly to the United States and buy the software for less money than it would cost to buy it in Australia. That's sort of disgusting. If you'd like to laugh at an executive embarrassing himself, just search for Australia Creative Cloud for a video of a corporate clown awkwardly dodging the question of why his company is price gouging its Australian customers. Getting back on topic, chances are this is going to make games more expensive in Australia, unless publishers are willing to adjust their prices accordingly. Are you an Australian gamer, and were you anticipating this? Hit us up on Twitter at OneRuleBeCool and let us know what you think about the situation. In next week's game releases, Horizon Zero Dawn is coming out, and it seems that it will have been well worth the wait. Developed by Guerrilla Games, Horizon is a post-apocalyptic ARPG set in a world that's inhabited by robot dinosaurs. You'll play as Aloy, a hunter of these mechanical monstrosities. Aloy isn't armed with RPGs, however. She just has her trusty bow and arrow and her wits. She's on a quest to uncover the secrets of the game's world. Now, Horizon Zero Dawn has thus far drawn very positive critical reception, being praised for its story, Aloy's character, and the action-packed gameplay. Shooting at giant robot dinosaurs is just as much fun in the game as it looks to be in the trailers. Personally, this is a game I would love to get my hands on. As a huge fan of Miyazaki's Nausicaa, the late post-apocalyptic setting has me excited. Whatever disaster has wrecked human civilization in the game is long past. Civilization and culture have re-emerged, but now new threats loom. Hence why the game's setting reminds me of Nausicaa. Add to that a protagonist who apparently has a less antagonistic relationship with nature than everybody else, and, well, red hair? You can see where the Nausicaa vibe is coming from. If you own a PlayStation 4 and you're looking for a stunning open-world adventure, Horizon Zero Dawn is well worth checking out. If RTS are more your thing, Halo Wars 2 was released on the Xbox One and Windows, and thus far, it's picked up a fair amount of critical praise. This game is not a shooter. Rather, it's a strategy game in which you control your units from high above. Now, in case you're unfamiliar with the RTS genre, just think of it as chess with lasers and aliens, in which all the pieces are moving at the same time. The story, from what I've heard, is nothing particularly exciting or complex. Just another ordinary bad dude and some evil aliens to stop. The story is pretty much more Halo. From what I've heard of the gameplay itself, it's pretty solid real-time strategy. In fact, it's one of the best that's available on console since it's built to be played with a controller. Ironically, the game is harder to play with a mouse and keyboard due to its menu designs and a few other features. I've heard other reports that the game controls better on PC, so I'm guessing it's a matter of taste. Now, some users have been having issues with getting the game to launch on PC in the first place, thanks to DRM imposed by the Windows Store. Microsoft, trying to secure a foothold in the PC gaming market, has a rather half-baked implementation of a software marketplace, and it is plagued with issues. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that there are plans to release the game on Steam, so if you're a PC gamer, you may want to hold off on picking up Halo Wars 2 until the issues are resolved. That said, it seems that the title does not have the same issues on the Xbox One. Check it out there.
Really short amount of time.
I love aerial units. Their big strength is terrain is not really an issue. It's great for swooping in and capturing points.
Make great use of the healing units like the Engineer and the Nightingale. Those are some of the most important units in Blitz.
I definitely like to throw things like blisterbacks out there and try to kind of control areas on the ground.
Some Nightingales with some Hornets flying cover are really an interesting, powerful combination.
Skirmish, maybe one of the best things about it is that it gives you some really good training on how to reduce your build times.
It's a great way to learn the game. It's a great way to actually experiment with different strategies.
How can I get to my best point the fastest? And Skirmish is a great way to get that repetition in and practice that.
Get your economy going fast. There's loads of ways to capture resources, whether it's through points, running around the map, get your Marines out there, start picking up crates, go and see what the AI is up to. Because if you're playing Skirmish, assume it's coming with the rush. Start building turrets.
Another RTS was released this week, Northgard. Unlike the sci-fi themed Halo Wars 2, Northgard is a medieval Norse fantasy about building settlements. So besides fighting off unfriendly Vikings and giants and dragons, there's also resource management to worry about, as well as farming, trading, etc. Interestingly enough, it's possible to achieve victory in Northgard through trade rather than conquest. A refreshing change of pace for Viking-themed RTS games, I suppose. Now, Northgard is currently in early access on Steam, and thus far, the players really seem to like it. If you're a fan of Age of Empires, it's absolutely worth checking out. Northgard is available for Windows. Can you go home again? It's a question that's been asked and answered in numerous stories throughout the years, and it's at the heart of one of this week's biggest indie releases, Night in the Woods. Out now after a tremendously successful Kickstarter campaign and 3 years of development, it's an adventure about college dropout May Borowski, who goes back home to reconnect with friends and family, only to discover that a great many things have changed. Home is a stranger place now. If you're into adventure games and you're looking for a cool new story with a lot of conversation and people and places to explore, you might enjoy Night in the Woods. It's thus far drawn plenty of critical acclaim as well as praise from players, though it seems that more than a few people are disappointed by the game's ending. Night in the Woods is available on Steam and itch.io for Mac, Windows, and Linux, as well as the PlayStation 4. The Myst-inspired educational game Odyssey, the next-generation science game, yes, that's the full title, was released on Steam Early Access this week. The game's premise is that you're searching for a girl and her family who've been stranded on the uninhabited Wretched Islands. They'd been sailing when their ship had been sunk by what I'm assuming were lazy, dim-witted pirates, who, convinced that the Wretched Islands were home to buried treasure, left the family there to dig it up for them. It's up to you to find this family by solving a series of science-related puzzles that the pirates are just too stupid to get past. I've not tried it, but I'd like to. Being in early access, the game's first 3 chapters are currently available and cover the origins of science, the shift from geocentric universe to heliocentric, as well as Galileo and physics. It's common for games to advertise their physics as being groundbreaking, but quite another for a game to actually go out of its way to teach physics to players, which is pretty cool. Thus far, Odyssey has received positive reviews from its players, so if you want to learn some science while having fun, check it out. Odyssey is available on Mac and Windows. Now, this is a game news show, but I do feel that a mention of this is warranted. Google's Tilt Brush software is now available on the Oculus Rift. Originally released for the HTC Vive, it's a piece of software that allows you to make really cool 3D art in virtual reality. I've heard a lot of cool things about it and seen some neat art. If you own a Rift, it's well worth checking out. Quick heads up, folks. A King's Tale, Final Fantasy XV, will be available to download for free on March 1st, 2017. In case you're unfamiliar with it, it's a Final Fantasy XV spin-off set 30 years before the events of the game. It was a pre-order bonus, and now this 2D side-scroller will be free for anybody who wants it. I've not played it, but I have heard that it is pretty decent. It's pretty hard to beat the price of free. A King's Tale Final Fantasy XV is available on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. In crowdfunding news this week, we're kicking it old school with Narita Boy, which is currently on Kickstarter, and it draws inspiration from such games as Super Brothers, Double Dragon and Another World, and some old Saturday morning cartoons. Think He-Man. Narita Boy is a platformer starring the titular Narita Boy. This dimension-hopping hero has to find a techno sword, beat a tremendous evil menace that threatens a digital kingdom, and go home. It's pretty standard fare, really. That said, it looks really solidly designed, and it's currently in development for Mac, Windows, and Linux. If the developers hit their stretch goals, it'll also be released on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. The game's biggest draw seems to be its incredibly retro aesthetic. It looks like the developers went absolutely crazy with the VHS punk vaporwave thing. If analog meeting digital is your style, Narita Boy is the game for you. I'm honestly not that into shmups, but the upcoming Hyper Sentinel looks pretty solid, so we're sharing it on this week's episode of 1RBC Gaming Weekly. The game is set to be released on Xbox One, PS4, PC, iOS, and Android, and it draws a lot of inspiration from older shmups. One of the more interesting rewards from the campaign is the limited edition USB drive that flips out of a cassette tape. For you youngsters in the audience, tape drives and cassette tapes were how video games got distributed way back in the day. This USB drive, besides looking cool, contains developer diaries and interviews, game demos, and more. Pretty cool if you ask me. If you'd like to try out Hyper Sentinel before pledging anything, there's a demo available through the game's Kickstarter page. If you're into crazy hard platformers, good news. Celeste, currently in development by Towerfall developer Matt Forson, is set to come to PC, PS4, and Switch later this year. We got a new trailer released for the game this week. Finally, we leave you with the latest trailer for Ooblets, an RPG with some farming elements that's coming to the Xbox One and PC. This week, it was announced that the game would be published by Double Fine. Well, that's it for this week's episode. For all the greatest game news and editorials, be sure to follow at OneRuleBeCool on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to follow me at Jordan_Cameron for my own views. Also, next week we will have an episode of One RBC Gaming Weekly. The week after that, we will not, as we'll be at PAX East. Stick with us for coverage of all the crazy games we check out over there.